Have any of you ever wanted to make a new beginning? Well, I'm here to tell you about one. My name is David Scofield. I was born in Albany County, New York in 1803. I grew up on my family farm there. I received my education there, and I married my childhood sweetheart there. We had 7 children. You know, sometimes God deals a hand and you just can't understand why. When that happens, we think, as we've been taught, perhaps it's all part of God's grand plan for us, and we just live with it. God dealt such a hand to my young wife. He took her from this earth, away from me and our 7 children. That was, needless to say, a time of great introspection and thoughtfulness for me personally. And after a while, I decided to move west, and I ended up here in Elgin, Illinois. I'd like to ask you that are here to look around and ask if there is any doubt that this is a beautiful, natural setting. And further, I'd like to ask you to try to find and identify what it is that nature has given us here that makes it so. Any ideas? The trees, of course. Well, think of these familiar words. I think that I shall never see a poem as beautiful as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree who looks at God each day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree who in summer may wear a nest of robins in her hair, whose bosom over which snow has lain, who lives intimately with the rain. Poems are written by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Well, contrary to my father's practice of general farming, I decided to specialize. So the first thing I did when I came to Elgin was to buy 130 acres of land west of town, and I planted and grew trees, of course. 2 years after my arrival, looking for that new beginning, it suddenly appeared before my eyes. I met, fell in love with, and married this beautiful woman. May I present Emily, as I like to call her, God's plan for me.
Well, I don't know about that, but my name is Emily, and it used to be Emily Larkin. My parents, Cyrus and Sarah, were from Fairfield, Vermont. And when I was 11, how old are you, young man?
I'm 11.
You're 11. That's how old I was when my parents settled us here in Elgin. It was a wonderful time. My father, he was a farmer and an insurance agent, and over time he became quite prominent here in Elgin. You see, he was the county assessor for private property, and specifically in the Northwest Township for most of Kane County. In addition, my father was the superintendent for the Methodist Episcopal Sunday School for many years. Now, I married my first love. His name was Calvin Wilcox. I was 20 years old, and only 5 years into our marriage, he died. He was returning from a visit to California. So at 25, I was a widow with no children. It was a very lonely and sad time for me. May I tell them? So, right, I felt a certain attraction towards David, and although he was 23 years my senior, and I attended school with some of his older children. We fell in love. In 1851, we joined hands in marriage, and it was a wonderful time for both of us to be reunited in love. And 3 years into our marriage, I gave birth to our son, Frank. He was such a joy. I was so happy. And then he was taken away from us. At 9.5 years old, he died. I miss our little boy so much. He rests right over there. I just miss him.
In 1867, the Northern Illinois Horticultural Society was formed, and then in 1868, we held our first meeting in Freeport, Illinois. I attended. We were 172 strong. I attended that meeting along with many people who were from the horticultural industry. There were plenty of apple growers, people who told us about the techniques and methods they used for growing and overwintering and selling their apples. There were other fruit growers of all kinds, peaches and plums, pears, apricots, berries. We had strawberries.
Excuse me, David?
Yes?
You know, I quite think your audience may enjoy hearing excerpts from your essay that you presented to the Horticultural Society. Here. Would you?
Thank you. Let me present just a few excerpts from the essay that I wrote and delivered to the organization, the Northern Illinois Horticultural Society. My essay was titled Timber Culture, a National Necessity. Now, I'm not going to read you the entire 1-hour presentation, but just a few excerpts to give you an idea what it was that I felt so strongly about. The unparalleled progress and prosperity of this country may be justly attributed to the convenience, excellence, and abundance of her forests. When our ancestors came to this continent, they found plantations of full-grown trees yielding food for man and beast. And thus we were provided in our helpless infancy as though provided for by a kind father, and we were dependent children. Centuries have passed, the growth of the nation has been vigorous and healthful, but in our national growth, we have nearly exhausted these natural resources. Already the pine is used up. In less than half a century, the supply of this most valuable building timber will be exhausted if we don't do something. Let us look ahead. See the hundreds of millions of people that will follow us, tilling the soil and crowding the thousand cities of this great nation. I ask, whence is to come the building materials to do all this great work? Do new forests of pine and cedar and fir just appear on their own? The answer historically is no. Yet this same pine grows with wonderful rapidity when cultivated in plantations. In testimony, I adduce my forest in Elgin, which 10 years ago was a smooth prairie and then planted with plants, tree seedlings. I am proud that after these years of nurturing and growing these trees, we have over 10,000 trees, and some of them mature enough to be used in the construction of our own home on the corner of Spring and Division Street. I implored the members of this horticultural society to get behind my mission to educate the American people in the need to conserve and replenish our natural resources, specifically our timber. I wonder, after my time is gone, whether this message will still be necessary, and if so, will people be hearing it? Emily and I were partners not only in life, but in business to a small degree. We were both members of the American Forestry Association. However, for Emily, that was only the beginning.
Well, see, with no children to raise, I became committed to serve. I was an active member and worker for the Methodist Episcopal Church. I was the president of the first missionary society for the Methodist Episcopal Church. I was the superintendent for the Young Women's Society. I also was an executive committee member for the Christian Women's Temperance Society. No drinking. I was a lifetime member of the Foreign Mission Society. A wonderful time, finally a sense of fulfillment and giving back and helping others, specifically women. In fact, I was at a meeting in Chicago in 1863 when I contracted a severe cold, which developed into chronic pneumonia. It changed my life. I already had a weak heart. I was unable to keep up with my daily life, and soon I was forced to be bedridden. It was so difficult to breathe. And in fact, in my last year, I couldn't speak. As a Christian woman, I knew that my days were numbered, but that I would soon be reunited with our 9-year-old son, Frank. I look forward to those days. I asked David to help me. We prepared a will. I asked him to bind my prized possessions. Many of my favorite books were signed by the author. I wanted to leave these to my closest friends and family members as a remembrance of me, something that was so special to me. And Quakerism. First Ladies of the White House. You must give this to Mrs. Miller. Women of the Orient. Poets of Connecticut. See to it that Lottie receives these. Finally, in my will, I gave $500 for the medical women, medical education, for the society that I believed in so much and served.
As our friends and family gathered round Emily's bed at our home on the corner of Spring and Division Street, she waved her last farewell, and then she took her last breath. That hand that God had dealt back in New York so long ago made no sense then any more than it did. And the hand that God dealt Emily in 1884, it made no sense at all. He took her at the age of 57, in the prime of her natural life. Thank you so much.
Be happy.